ultimate goal: to take her place in history as the first female leader of Communist China. This is the story of Madame Mao.
Madame Mao was another name for Jiang Cheng. She rose to prominence and was at the front of the Cultural Revolution thanks to her marriage to Mao, but in the weeks following his passing, her decline from that position was sudden and uncontrollable. Although Jiang Cheng was held accountable for the deaths of thousands of individuals as well as several professions and livelihoods, she wasn't found guilty of any particular crime. Who was Madame Mao or Jiang Cheng? China was mistreated and tortured throughout Mao's Cultural Revolution, but he would escape punishment. Not really. In a masterstroke of wordplay and deception, the party admitted that Mao was to blame for the disastrous Cultural Revolution, but it attributed the worst of its crimes to the Gang of Four, a group of senior party officials who supported the most extreme interpretation of the revolution and collaborated closely with Mao to carry out his plan, frequently eluding formal power structures in the process. The party nevertheless saw Mao as crucial to its reputation despite the tragedies of the time and even before, during the Great Leap Forward. After Mao's death and the party's decision to disassociate itself from the final 20 years of Mao's life, the Gang of Four, especially Jiang Cheng, became a barely concealed stand-in for Mao. Jiang Cheng, who was born in 1914 in Shandong province, laid the groundwork for her later revolutionary politics. Her mother was a carpenter's secondary wife. Following a domestic violence incident, the unidentified mother took her daughter and left for Tianjin, then Jinan, where she eventually enrolled in university in Qingdao, a former German colony renowned for its beer. Following graduation from college, Jiang Cheng pursued careers in acting and politics. In 1933, she became a member of the Communist Party and went on to appear on stage and screen in the 1930s, mostly in Shanghai and Beijing, under the stage name Lan Peng. She left Shanghai after it fell to Japanese forces in 1937, making her way to the communist base location in the barren Shaanxi Highlands near Yunnan. She started working as a teacher at the Lushun Academy of Arts there. She also started going by Jiang Cheng, the name she would use for the remainder of her life around this time. Even more tragically, Jiang Cheng at this point started dating Mao Zedong. It was a controversial connection. Mao was not only wed, but he had a third wife who had fought well for the revolution and had experienced a long march. Mao was a parent to at least 5 children. He was in the Soviet Union when Jiang Cheng arrived in Yunnan, and she would stay there until 1947. Mao and Jiang Cheng were married in 1938, although Mao was already married and over twice Jiang Cheng's age. The marriage was purportedly contingent on Jiang Cheng abstaining from politics for 20 or, according to some, 30 years. Why was the Chinese Communist Party afraid of Madame Mao? Jiang Cheng was a confidant of Mao when he was discredited after the Great Leap Forward and was planning how to reclaim power. In order to redeem himself and reclaim his position of power, Mao resorted to soft power. His plans relied heavily on his wife, who held prominent posts in the Ministry of Culture and the Central Propaganda Department. For many years, Madame Mao remained one of the most prominent individuals in China, having assumed the position of vice chair of the Cultural Revolution Group in May 1966. Jiang Cheng subsequently remarked, "I was Chairman Mao's dog. Whoever he said to bite, I bit." Jiang Cheng had pointed fangs, whether or not they were used under Mao's orders. Jiang Cheng personified the violence and radicalism of the Cultural Revolution more than anybody else, with the exception of Mao. The collapse of Jiang Cheng was abrupt. As part of the struggle for leadership to succeed Mao as the creator of the People's Republic, the Gang of Four was brought to their knees by the so-called October Group in September 1976. Shanghai streets were alive with joy upon hearing of Jiang Cheng's arrest. Her trial, along with the other 3 members of the Gang of Four, played a crucial role in Deng Xiaoping's ascent to power and consolidation of his rule, driving out adherents of Mao's Cultural Revolution and setting the stage for the economic changes that characterized China's opening and reform. Jiang Cheng was put on trial in November 1980 in what was essentially a show trial with predetermined results and propaganda as its main objective. Her 20,000-page indictment described thousands of crimes, although it hardly ever mentioned Jiang Qing's involvement in any of them. Jiang Qing was given a death sentence in late January, but she was officially commuted to life in prison in 1983 after a 2-year respite. Jiang Qing's reign came to an end on May 14, 1991, when she committed suicide by hanging herself in a hospital lavatory after being granted medical leave. Does Mao still have an influence on China today? Although the turmoil and devastation of the ultra-radical Cultural Revolution of 1966 to 1976 severely damaged Mao's reputation, succeeding generations have mostly accepted the official assessment of the ruling Communist Party that he was, on balance, 70% correct and 30% incorrect. There are indications of how, although living in a contemporary, industrial, and increasingly capitalistic China that has diverged significantly from his vision of a radical communist state rooted in egalitarian principles and peasant values, he has come to represent the state virtually. One of Mao's greatest triumphs was uniting a divided China into a single nation by toppling Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist regime, vanquishing warlord groups, and establishing authority over the outlying western provinces of Tibet and Xinjiang. In fact, Mao's empire has expanded since the former Portuguese and British colonies of Macau and Hong Kong were reabsorbed in recent decades. Tensions with southern neighbors have also arisen as a result of China's aggressive actions to assert its claim over almost the whole South China Sea. Though his totalitarian state is no longer in existence, Mao promoted rigorous Communist Party control over all facets of life, and the party still holds a firm hold on political power. The pro-democracy demonstrations in 1989 that centered on Tiananmen Square were its last significant test, which was violently put down and is still forbidden today. One of Mao's most well-known proverbs was that political power comes from the barrel of a gun, and the PLO continues to serve as the party's house guard in spite of demands that it switch its allegiance to the government. The PLA is becoming a more powerful force in regional and even international military matters, in addition to maintaining its monopoly on force at home. It's currently the largest standing military in the world with 2.3 million members, while intentions are to reduce that number by 300,000. How do you feel about Madame Mao? Do you believe Madame Mao would have gone on to become even more powerful if Mao had been alive? Do share your views on this in the comments down below. For more interesting stories and updates, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to press the bell icon for notifications. Bye for now.